about one of the basic building blocks of JavaScript, functions. If you're following along in the exercise files, we're on Chapter 4, Example 5, looking at script.html. This is another simple, straightforward HTML page. All that's on it is your usual link to somewhere else. It's an ahref tag. If you're not familiar with that, you're going to want to check out one of our other HTML files. And in this case, what we're going to look at for right now is the ahref tag. And we're going to want to add one thing so that JavaScript can talk to this link. We're going to add an ID, which is just giving this link a name, and it's going to be called redirect. So JavaScript is going to be able to make this link smarter, and it's going to do that via some functions. If you don't have JavaScript, it will go to the index.html page, same as always, and that's this page. Nothing much particularly interesting in it. So here's our script.html page, which loads first. And then here's our script.js file, which right now doesn't contain anything. So we need to write this, and we're going to do that to show off some functions. We want our stuff to happen when the document first loads, when the browser window first loads in our HTML page. So we do that by starting off setting something to happen, window.onload. That says, when the page is finished loading, do whatever it is I tell it to do next. We set that to be init all, followed by a semicolon. Init all is going to be a function which we're about to write. So function starts off with the word function, telling JavaScript that this is a function, and then the word init all. Init all stands for initialize all. I tend to use init all pretty often because it's just my way of remembering that this is going to initialize everything that needs to be initialized when the page first loads. Init all, or whatever you want to name your function, is followed by a set of parentheses. There may be stuff inside the parentheses. If there is, those are parameters being passed to the parentheses. We're not going to cover that yet. We'll be talking about that much later on. And then whatever's inside that function is inside these curly braces. So now we're going to add some lines of code, in this case one line of code, inside init all. All the JavaScript we've talked about previously just falls right through. This is only going to happen when it's triggered via the window.onload. It's not just going to fall through into this. Functions are skipped when JavaScript is just falling through. They get triggered when something else tells them to be triggered. In this case, what's going to be triggered is this one line. Document. And document is the document we're working with. Then we're going to do the command get element by ID. Remember we added that ID attribute to the link? So we want to get that element, that link. So we know the name of an ID, so we're going to give it get element by ID is followed by parentheses, and then we want a string inside there, and the string we want is redirect, because that was what we called it. Now once we have that element, we know what we want to do with it is change what it does when you click on it. It's a link. Somebody's going to click on it. We want to grab that. Before HTML can do something with that link, JavaScript is going to grab that click. And we do that by saying onClick. That's an event handler. We talked about event handlers in general back in Chapter 2. Here's an example of one in use. OnClick. When this onClick happens, we want to call a function called clickHandler. And that's all we're going to do in init all. So nothing is going to happen at all that the user will see JavaScript-wise until they click on this link. Stuff is going to happen behind the scenes, which is that we're going to reset what happens with the click, but nothing that the user will see will happen until they click on that link. So here's our next function. Start with the word function, and then the name of it, which is clickHandler, followed again by parentheses and braces, and then inside clickHandler we have two lines. An alert, same as we've seen before, followed by parens. Inside that is a string, and we're just going to tease them and say, ow, that hurt. End with a semicolon. And then we're going to do something a little bit tricky here, because in JavaScript, we can make a decision whether or not they want to actually continue on with this link. We may want to say under some situations, yes, we can, and under other situations, no, we can't. In this situation, we're going to say, no, we don't want them to ever be following the link. What we're going to say here is return false. False is a Boolean, as you might guess. We could return true, but returning false to onClick, that onClick being set to false, tells JavaScript, don't follow the link. Remember that ahref? Don't do it. So we're going to grab that click and we're going to say, don't follow it. So even though they clicked on it, tough. So that's all the JavaScript we're going to have here. Save this file. Now go out and load your web page into a browser. And it says, welcome to our site. Come on in. And it says, ow, that hurt. And it doesn't matter how many times you click on it. It's not going to let you through. Now, if we go back to our HTML page, or actually to our JavaScript, if we said return true and save it, go back to the browser, reload this page, and now click it, you'll still get this alert, but now it will go through. So you can see what happens when the user does not have JavaScript turned on. So now you can see what happens if we return true, which is also the case of what happens when the user has JavaScript turned off. They just don't get that little alert message. So to recap, we told JavaScript to call the initAll function when the page loaded using the onLoad event handler. The initAll function changed the onClick handler for the redirect link. We set it to call the click handler function. The click handler function put up a little alert message and returns either true or false, and whether it's true or false tells JavaScript whether or not to load in the next page. Next up, even smarter links. In this example, we're going to use JavaScript to make links just a little bit smarter than we did previously. For those of you following along with the exercise files, we're in Chapter 4, Example 6.1, looking at script.html. This is the same example as we just used previously. It's just, again, a link that points to somewhere that we can only get to if we have JavaScript turned off. In the previous example, we learned how to set up this link so that we can only go through if you don't have JavaScript. This time around, we're going to set it up so it goes one place if you have JavaScript and another place if you do not. Our index.html file is the same as it was previously, saying, sorry, you couldn't get there. Now we have a JS welcome file, which we can get to if JavaScript is turned on. Script.html looks just the same, so the important stuff is all in script.js. Here's where we left things last time. We want to first off set this to be false because we want click handler to tell JavaScript not to load in that link from HTML. Instead, we're going to do something else, and that's going to happen right above here. We're going to set window.location equal to, in quotes, JS welcome.html, followed by a semicolon. And what that does is that will reset the page that we're on. So very simply, it will say, if we have JavaScript, go to this page. If you don't have JavaScript, you'll never get into this at all, and it will load up the index page, same as if you're just some plain vanilla whatever. If you have JavaScript turned on, you'll load the JS welcome page. If you have JavaScript turned off, or a browser that doesn't support JavaScript at all, you'll go to the index.html page, and you won't get an error. Nothing bad will happen. You'll just be sent down one of two different paths depending on the capabilities of your browser. So let's test it out. Here's our HTML file. into Firefox, and we click through, and here's jswelcome.html, which says that we passed the test. Now, if we go back a page, in Firefox, if we go to Preferences, under the Firefox menu, we can turn JavaScript off, close Preferences, reload this page. Now when we click it, it says that you're in index.html saying your browser didn't quite make the cut. So it's that simple to make this simple link do one of two different things based on, in this case, whether or not you have JavaScript. We're setting JavaScript back on because we need it for our next example. Now we go back into our text editor, and we're going to close all these windows because we want to show something a little different. And we're going to look at example 6.2. Here in the second example, the HTML file is very similar. This time, though, it goes to a different link. It's to an actual web page. In this case, the link is to my cat's website. Check it out. It really is my cat's website. Our JavaScript file, though, we want it to do something a little different this time. What we want it to do is put up a warning message saying, hey, you're leaving this website. You're going to a whole nother website. We're not responsible for that. It can be a concern if you're a big company like a newspaper site or something like that. When you point off to somebody else, you may not want somebody who isn't so much of a savvy surfer. They might think that that site has some connection to you. So you want to warn people, this site is somewhere else. We're not responsible for their content. We're pointing to it, but that doesn't mean we control it. So in this case, we're going to warn them of that. But we don't want every link to show that. We only want links to show that where clearly we're going to an entirely different site. We're leaving our site. So in that case, what we do is we want to get rid of what's in ClickHandler now. And instead, we want to add an if statement inside there. And we want to check and see if as followed by parentheses, as always, we're going to look at something called this. This is a keyword that's built into JavaScript. This can be a little difficult to understand, but it's a really important concept. This is context dependent. So in this case, this depends on why this function was called. This function was called because we clicked a link, so what's being passed is a link object. So we know if we look at this, it's going to be a link. So given that we know that, we now want to parse out some stuff from this. In order to do that, we need to turn this into a string. So we do that by using the built-in JavaScript function toString. Notice that the S is uppercase. That's important. That matters. And then follow that with parentheses, and that turns it into a string. Using dot syntax, as we discussed earlier on, talking about JavaScript objects, add a dot, and we follow that by another built-in JavaScript command called index of. And that's capital O in index of. And that's again followed by parentheses. We want to look for something inside this string. In this case, what we want to do is say, if we can find our current domain name in the link that we're going off to, then we know it's on our same site, and we don't want to put up a message. If we can't find the current domain name in that link, then we must be going somewhere else, and we want to warn people about that. I'm going to pretend this is on my website, my website is Dory.com. So we're leaving Dory.com and going off to pixel.mu. So we're going to look for the word Dory. If the word Dory is found, great, we're staying on the same website. We don't want to do anything at all. If it's not found, then it's going to have a value of less than 0. If it is found, it's going to be the place in the string where the index of string starts. If it isn't found at all, it's going to return a value of -1. So we can just check to see if it's less than 0, and then we want to do whatever is inside the next curly braces after the if. What we're going to put in is an alert, followed by parens. Inside that is a string warning people we are not responsible for the content of pages outside our site. Nice little disclaimer. End with a semicolon. Save it. Now we want to go back out